next year.
WWE has been hosting events in Saudi Arabia since 2014. They would host the non-televised house shows for 4 years until 2018, when WWE made a 10-year deal with Ministry of Sport. This means that WWE would co-host pay-per-view shows, which would later become premium live events. In addition, WWE would also broadcast primetime shows like Raw and SmackDown. The relationship between WWE and Saudi Arabia has come together to help with Saudi Arabia's 2030 vision. The country has been hosting a number of major events across the sports world, venturing into UFC, boxing, soccer, golf, and other sports. This is the real reason to help boost their social and economic program across many different areas. In the subject of WWE making more money in Saudi Arabia, WWE would hold 2 large-scale events each year, in which that WWE has been making at least $100 million for 2 shows a year compared to the annual WrestleMania itself. It's no secret that WWE is doing financially well, but not so great for numerous reasons. This partnership deal has faced different criticism that led to many questionable reasons based on Saudi Arabia's past history with human rights, political statements, and controversial news. For the subject of this video, there are several facts and controversial truth about WWE's partnership with Saudi Arabia. Between 2014 and 2019, the female wrestlers were not permitted to wrestle or perform in Saudi Arabia due to the country's strict laws on women's rights. During the WWE's first live streaming event, Greatest Royal Rumble, WWE aired a promotional video of co-branded shows on the WWE network, including female wrestlers in their ring gear. That was the moment when the live audience in attendance cheered for the female wrestlers. Later on, the Ministry of Sport issued an apology for indecent material that aired at the event, in which WWE wasn't aware of having female wrestlers exposing themselves with their regular ring gear. In late 2018, during the first ever Crown Jewel event, Renee Young was working on the commentary desk wearing long covered clothes. However, no female wrestlers were allowed to wrestle until finally 1 year later in 2019 at the second annual of Crown Jewel. Natalya and Lacey Evans would become the first women to ever wrestle in Saudi Arabia. They would have to wear a full bodysuit with their t-shirt on it as part of the dress code laws. What's funny about this is that back in late 2017, Sasha Banks and Alexa Bliss wrestled each other in their full jumpsuit in Abu Dhabi with similar dress code laws. WWE didn't think about it until early 2022 when they hosted the Elimination Chamber in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Every female wrestler would wear their unique style of jumpsuit in every future event in Saudi Arabia. It seems like female wrestlers didn't have an issue with performing in Saudi Arabia. As for male wrestlers, well, this is pretty complicated in the wake of the world's biggest news. In 2018, a US-based Saudi journalist for Middle East Eye and the Washington Post, Jamal Khashoggi, was assassinated by Saudi agents in Istanbul. This happened 1 month prior to the Crown Jewel event. WWE would receive numerous calls and messages, and it was asked to cancel the event due to the controversial news. In spite of the political discussion on whether WWE should continue its partnership with Saudi Arabia, WWE would then move forward to promote the show without mentioning Saudi Arabia as the event's location until late October. Crown Jewel would go on as planned as part of the partnership's mandatory obligation. The show went well financially, but was creatively bad when the Crown Jewel 2018 would become one of the worst premium live events in Saudi Arabia or any existent next to Super Showdown 2019 and 2020. More on that later. Obviously, WWE wouldn't want to force their wrestlers to come to Saudi Arabia, as the wrestlers have the right to decide whether they want to come or not. There's a list of wrestlers who had their choice not to travel to Saudi Arabia for a good reason. Understandably, there are other wrestlers who aren't allowed to compete over there. Perfect example like Sami Zayn, a Syrian descent, initially did not participate at the Greatest Royal Rumble and other future events. What's really funny about this is that Sami Zayn did wrestle at a house show in Saudi Arabia back in 2014. However, WWE specifically asked for him to not be involved in a televised show in the wake of the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Syria. Fast forward to 2023, both Syria and Saudi Arabia resumed their diplomatic relation after cutting ties for more than 10 years. Sami Zayn would finally wrestle in Saudi Arabia, where he can fully embrace his own religion and culture in front of the Middle Eastern fans. Another wrestler like Kevin Owens, who competed at the Greatest Royal Rumble but did not volunteer to wrestle in future Saudi Arabia events until Night of Champions 2023, where he and Sami Zayn came in and walked out as the undisputed tag team champions. Even more names like Roman Reigns, Daniel Bryan, and John Cena have wrestled at the Greatest Royal Rumble but refused to wrestle in Saudi Arabia in the wake of the journalist's death. Even before Roman Reigns announced his leukemia diagnosis, Roman reportedly informed Vince McMahon that he would not compete at Crown Jewel. Surprisingly, he would change his mind after he got into readmission. As for John Cena, he didn't have an issue coming back to Saudi Arabia for Crown Jewel 2023, where he fought against Solo Sikoa before heading back to Hollywood. Oh, and don't forget about his last match in Saudi Arabia against CM Punk during his farewell tour. Speaking of CM Punk, at one point CM Punk made a tweet about telling The Miz to go suck a blood money covered dick in Saudi Arabia, you freaking dork, on Twitter. He has previously stated that he would not come to Saudi Arabia. Several years later, CM Punk decided to change his mind and would make an appearance, apologize for his past comments with a mixed bag of reactions. Aside from refusal of going to Saudi Arabia, there are some wrestlers who are not permitted to wrestle for numerous reasons. Names like Aleister Black, who is not allowed to compete in Saudi Arabia due to his religious tattoo on his back, which didn't fit well with Saudi Arabia's religious beliefs. Another name like MVP, who is a Muslim turned atheist, was also not permitted to go there. Noam Dar, who has never wrestled in Saudi Arabia, is due to his Israeli ethnicity. Well, actually, let's not get into that part. In spite of that, both Goldberg and Paul Heyman have traveled and worked in multiple Saudi Arabia shows without any issues. Even though both of these men are Jewish, they would still receive a heartwarming welcome from the Saudi Arabian fans. Recently, both Tonga Loa and Jacob Fatu were originally not scheduled to travel to Saudi Arabia due to their past criminal records. However, both of them would eventually be allowed to travel there as WWE most likely resolved their overseas traveling issues. And speaking of traveling issues, back in late 2019, the majority of WWE wrestlers and staff were held back in Saudi Arabia when the charter flight was delayed for multiple hours at King Fahd International Airport. Both WWE and Atlas Airlines have confirmed that the flight was grounded for mechanical problems. However, there are some reports, according to former WWE Spanish commentator Hugo Savinovich and wrestling journalist Dave Meltzer, that the flights were delayed due to the payment disputes from previous shows, which is one of the reasons why it was such a traveling nightmare for WWE wrestlers and staff. What's even shocking is that at least 20 WWE employees, including Vince McMahon, Brock Lesnar, Hulk Hogan, and a dozen wrestlers and staff, booked their own flights back to the United States while WWE was broadcasting SmackDown Live in Buffalo, featuring multiple female wrestlers and NXT superstars. The majority of wrestlers and staff would be stuck in Saudi Arabia and would not make it to SmackDown as they were forced to leave the airport and stay in their hotels for the night. After roughly 24 hours of a delayed flight, the majority of wrestlers and staff would finally leave the country in peace. Needless to say, both WWE and Saudi Arabia have learned their lesson the hard way. Reminder that this was around the time when Vince McMahon was still in charge, and at least several wrestlers would not come back to Saudi Arabia, additionally threatened to leave the company for good. This wasn't the only issue that WWE has been facing as part of their partnership deal with Saudi Arabia. On March 6, 2020, a retirement fund for firefighters filed a lawsuit against the company in the United States District Court, stemming from concern related to the fund's holding of WWE stock. According to the Forbes article, it stated that it is an attempt at class action alleging that WWE defrauded investors via its handling of their deals with the Saudi royal family, who also control OSN, the network that airs WWE programming in Saudi Arabia. The lawsuit claims that the Saudi Arabian government failed to pay the WWE millions of dollars owed from their deal with the company, that WWE has failed to disclose said payment issues, and that OSN unlawfully terminated a broadcast deal with WWE. As WWE went forward without a problem as business as usual, the majority of fans from the internet wrestling community are not very pleased about the idea of WWE having to broadcast larger shows and dream matches in Saudi Arabia. Earlier as stated, based on Saudi Arabia's human rights record, one of the biggest criticisms is that WWE has prioritized financial gains over ethical considerations. A perfect example is that WWE has been promoting an upcoming Royal Rumble, which will take place in Saudi Arabia in 2026. Based on how many dislikes for this YouTube video itself, it's no surprise that the people on the internet would either boycott the show or demand that the show should take place that's not in Saudi Arabia. For example, if you were to watch the Women's Royal Rumble match that would take place in Saudi Arabia, you would have to watch every female competitor in a full bodysuit, and their representation in the ring could most likely be downgraded from their usual appearance. Or even worse, removing the Women's Royal Rumble match from that year's Royal Rumble show could be the biggest travesty in WWE history. Since the Royal Rumble is going to take place in Saudi Arabia, there's a higher chance that WWE could possibly bring WrestleMania to Saudi Arabia sometime in 2027 or later in the future. Despite the business partnership deal, the real truth is that the Saudi Arabian officials, especially the prince himself, don't care much about the quality of the pay-per-view show, but only cares about the publicity and presence. And speaking of the truth, WWE has broadcast many terrible pay-per-view shows such as December to Dismember, Great American Bash franchise, King of the Ring 1995, WrestleMania 9, WrestleMania 11, WrestleMania 27, and WrestleMania 32, Battleground franchise, Royal Rumble 2014 and 2015, Hell in a Cell 2019, you name it. When you look at the pay-per-view show in Saudi Arabia, wrestling fans will never forget how memorably bad it was. When you look at Crown Jewel 2018, there were some major disastrous moments that actually happened. This World Cup tournament doesn't live up to its name, most of the matches are low quality and easily forgettable, and also the terrible idea of watching Brock Lesnar winning the Universal title again. Oh yeah, Shane McMahon, who was not even a participant, somehow has the authority to put himself into a match and won the trophy to become the best in the world. Oh yeah, don't forget about the worst pay-per-view match in history to ever exist, which took place in the main event, combining all of these wrestlers' ages of 200. If you pay attention to these moments when old wrestlers took a nasty bump and perform a wrestling move, this goes to show that these wrestlers who are past their prime have no business performing in the ring. If you don't believe me, just look at those matches from start to finish and you'll get the answer. This is like watching the entire existence of heroes of wrestling dedicated to those wrestling legends who can't perform the same way as they did in the old wrestling days. Now think about it, if you were to watch those dream matches that happened somewhere in 2000s, that would be interesting to watch, but the fact that these matches actually existed in late 2010s goes to show how wrong it really was. One of the facts that their bodies are aging, ignoring their personal health, ruining their legendary careers, and only caring about grabbing a huge load of blood money. Truthfully, it was a stupid idea from bad creative, despite the fact that the Saudi officials wanting to see their favorite wrestlers in sports entertainment. Oh yeah, remember when Goldberg fought against The Undertaker back in Super Showdown 2019? And what about Super Showdown 2020 when Goldberg fought against the late great The Fiend Bray Wyatt in the terrible main event that lasted 3 minutes, where Goldberg won the Universal Championship as part of this terrible decision? Oh yeah, what about this lackluster show, Elimination Chamber 2022? The show was so highly forgettable that it was so bad that it's pretty unexplainable to be one of the worst Road to WrestleMania ever. No wonder WWE was creatively bankrupt at that time, especially when you had Vince McMahon around. I mean, no need to go through a lot of details for these terrible Saudi Arabia shows, but at least there are some premium live event shows in Saudi Arabia that are pretty good and okay. Needless to say, no matter how bad it was to have a show in Saudi Arabia, WWE continues to move forward and make a huge load of money as a way to keep the Saudi Arabians happy. With that being said, those are the controversial facts and truth about the WWE having a show in Saudi Arabia. What is your take on WWE running a show in Saudi Arabia? And is there any other facts and truth that's being left out from this video? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, and hit the bell icon for more wrestling content like this one. Don't forget to check out other videos from this channel for your support. Until next time, thanks for watching, hope to see you again in the next one.